Shut up and sit down.
Hi guys, I'm Matt. Welcome to my channel, Astro Pics UK. In this episode, I'm going to show you how I processed my HA image of NGC 7000, which is the North American nebula. It was captured on my Orion ED80T CF using my Canon 700D, which I've astro modified myself, and I've been using an Astronomik 12nm HA filter. Now, I know it's not a done thing to use a narrowband filter with a colour camera, and especially a DSLR, as they're not as sensitive to light as mono cameras or other dedicated astro cams. But where I am in the centre of Birmingham, the UK, I've got Bortle class 9 skies, and using a narrowband filter is just a necessity. I wouldn't get away without using it. So I've managed to find a way of processing the data to get a colour image which has the appearance of an RGB image. Managed to balance out the background to get a nice black background and a nice red colour in the nebulosity. Obviously it's only using one wavelength of light, but nonetheless it produces a pleasing image that I think looks pretty cool. So I'm going to go through that process with you, and hopefully you can use that on your data as well. Alright, let's get started. Right, okay, so when you first get your image open, so here I've got NGC 7000 here, you can see well, if I move to the red channel, you can kind of make out what would be the Gulf of Mexico, I guess, and Florida would be around here, so they call it the North American Nebula. So we're going to start off, you'll see these black lines around the outside of the image here. These are stacking artifacts where the individual frames haven't quite lined up in the stacking software. So you're left with a bit of an overlap around the outside. So we want to get rid of that to start off with. So we'll do that with a selection tool, image and crop. Then we want to see if we can get any movement in the levels, and we can bring the white slider down to here. You don't want to go any further than where you can see this line here. That means that there is data in this area of the image. If you pull it in too far, you end up clipping it, and it just blows out any of the white areas. So if you stop just before, you won't blow out any of the whites. So we go OK, and because we've got a 32-bit image, there's nothing more that we can really do in this mode. So we go to image mode and 16-bit, and that will open up a load more options for us to edit further. Got to go to exposure and gamma. Okay. Right. The first thing we want to do, because this is just a HA image, so you can see that it's mainly red data, hardly any blue, tiny bit of green, but mostly red. So we're going to balance all the colours out, but we also want to make a luminance layer. So to do that, I normally go to image mode, lab color, and that in the channels then you get lab and lightness. I normally go on the lightness mode, Control A, which is select all, Control C to copy, and then open up a new file. Excuse this computer, it's particularly slow. It's really not built for doing Photoshop, but I don't think it did anything then actually. There we go. Alright, then you go clipboard, and I don't know what these settings will be like on on your image, but normally this would be 16-bit. I don't know why it keeps defaulting to 8-bit, but make sure that is on 16-bit, otherwise you'll end up with a horrible patchy image, because there aren't so many layers of grey that there's only so many greys that it can use, so it's best to go for 16-bit rather than the 8-bit. Clipboard, okay, all this should just be the same as what you've just copied. So you go create, and go Control V, paste that in there, and we'll come back to that later, and that's what we're going to use as our luminance layer. So go back on lab, go back to layers, and we need to go back to mode and put that back to RGB color. Right, so I think in the levels you'll probably see that the blue and the green is right up against this left hand side, so we can't pull this in any further. We can't pull the white slider in any further, so there's nothing more we can do to that. Now to balance the colours, I'm sure that there is probably a much better way of doing this, but for me the best way to do these HA images is if you just go to the red channel and you select any areas where there's a lot of nebulosity. So you don't want to do anything to this, so make sure the feather is on 50, selection, and inverse. So these are the areas that we're going to focus on balancing the colour in. We don't want to do too much to affect what's going on in this area. So go to filter, and this is a plugin that you can get for Photoshop. It's from Astronomik tool, and it's the Carboni action set, and it's the gradient exterminator. No, sorry, it's not the Carboni action set, it is just gradient exterminator. That's $50, which works out to be about £41, something like that. And essentially it's used to balance any gradients, and you can also balance the colour. You need to make sure you go back to your RGB before you click on that. And the settings that I use are normally medium, and then if I've got a normal RGB image, I'll balance the colours automatically, so you can uncheck that, but in this instance I'm going to let this plugin do the balancing, and it does a much better job. Trying to balance the colours in a HA image is just an absolute nightmare. So once you've done that, you can deselect. It's best just to go back to layers, and you just do a duplicate that layer just to keep that one as the original layer. So from here you can see now that the background is a lot more black, and you can see that all the channels are in line, so we might actually be able to image adjustment levels, and we can pull the black slider in now just to here, not a huge amount but still a little bit, and we can pull the white slider in. So once you've done that, it's always best to copy what's shown in this layer onto a new one, so if you do anything on the next layer up that you're not keen on, you can always revert back to that last layer. So you do that by Shift, Control, Alt and E, and that gives you a new layer which is the same as what was visible on the layer below. Now we're going to do our first curve stretch, and to do this we're just going to stretch up like that. There we go, that's looking good already. So once you've done the curve stretch, we'll do another Shift, Control, Alt and E, copy that layer. It's good to do that after every action you make or every process you do, just to do that to to make sure that you're keeping a record of what you've got, just in case you want to go back. So for example, if we weren't happy with the severity of that one, you can always lower the opacity just so it's less severe, but for now we're going 100%. So after this we'll do another levels adjustment, so we can pull that dark slider in. Okay, and what we're going to do next is another your layer again, Shift Control Alt and E, and then we're going to do another curves. So we can just pull that up again. We don't want to go too severe on this one, although we'll be fading all this, we'll be blurring all this out, so we've essentially got a starless image that we can use as the color layer. We still want to make sure we don't get too much noise. We want to make sure it's fairly smooth for bringing the luminous layer in over the top. We can also pull the blacks down a bit there as well, so we don't overstretch the black data. Okay, Shift Control Alt and E for a new layer. I'm going to do, after each of these, it's always best just to check your levels again, because again we can pull the dark slider in again. Excuse me. Right. So next we are going to do some noise reduction. As you can see in the color data here, it's quite a bit of noise, and in the black region as well there's a lot of noise. So I'm going to come to my action sets down here. This is the Astronomik tool action set, Carboni's actions. This one is actually less than the gradient filter. This one is $22 or about £18, something like that. And this has all sorts of actions that just make your life a hell of a lot easier. You've got make stars smaller, reduce space noise, deep space noise, increase the star color, and essentially it's just, it doesn't add anything to it or take anything away from it. It just does all the boosts that are associated with making the stars, increasing the star color. Essentially just it selects stars and then boosts the saturation on their color. So they're really good to use. It saves a lot of time, and for the price it's well worth it. If you're doing a lot of processing, I'd definitely recommend getting these. So we're going to start off with a space noise reduction, and that will reduce the noise in the nebulosity itself. So you hit play, and again it might take a bit of time on this laptop, but this one's normally pretty quick. So on my normal PC it will normally be done in 10 seconds max, but this is a bit longer. Okay, so that's done its job. Just let it do a bit of thinking before it wakes up again. Now the more layers you put down here, the slower it's going to get. So what I normally do when I start to get a few layers here, once I'm moving a bit further on, is just to merge those, or you can delete them if you want. But if you've got a decent computer, it's always good to keep that workflow there until the very end, so you can always go back to any point. You can see here now that's done a pretty good job actually of getting rid of a lot of that noise. Now I could run that again, I might do that, so I'm going to leave that one at 100%. Shift Control Alt and E for your new layer, and I'm going to run that a second time. Now you don't want to run it too many times, because what it can start doing is start merging your stars together, because it's kind of smoothing out the areas in between and subtracting any noise that it can find from that. Sometimes it can also reduce the stars and it will start to blur those out, and it can start to make it look very messy, and you can get a strange kind of effect going on if you overdo the noise reduction. So it's good to get the noise level down, but you're never going to be zooming in this far to your images unless you're selling them professionally. So I think just get it looking so it's looking pretty nice, but don't go over the top with it. So you can see that's pretty good now. When you zoom out, you obviously can't read that noise from this distance, so that's fine. And to be fair, the stars, they all seem to look pretty okay as well, so I might just leave that one at 100% as well. But if you're not happy with it, you can always reduce the opacity so it's just less severe, because what will happen as well is you will be reducing the amount of detail that you've got. But again, this isn't going to be a detail layer, so you can fade a bit of that out. It's not quite so important. So once you're happy with that, Shift, Control, Alt and E, new layer. Now we're going to do a deep space noise. Hit play, and essentially what that's going to do is it's going to reduce the noise in the background sky, so the black areas. And you'll see in a minute that it will mask out all the nebulosity so that it's not affecting that so much. It'll still do it a little bit, but it's mainly going to affect dark areas. Again, I might need to fast forward this through it. You can see there, that's the mask for the nebulosity, so that area will not be affected by the noise reduction quite so much. Okay, so now if we zoom in, see that's done a pretty good job smoothing out that noise. And you don't want to do it too much because you end up with this like mottly kind of effect. So I think I'm going to leave that one as it is. Just do the one pass on that. And what you can do now, Control Shift Alt and E, new layer. Be able to drag those levels in again, because once you start smoothing out that noise, it kind of reduces the colour in your black areas, and that allows you then to bring that black slider in. Okay, now what I'm going to do on this, because I edited this the other day as well, and it was it turned out a bit too red. You want to go fairly red with this data at this stage, because when you put the luminosity layer in, it will wash it out slightly. So don't try and get this colour exactly how you want it now, but it needs to be fairly close to it. And at the moment, this is looking pretty pinky. I'm not really that happy with the way that's looking. So what we're going to do, what we're going to try is do a new layer, and then we'll do an adjustment, curves. And then what you can do is if you press Control and click in an area, it plots on the relevant point for the area that you've just clicked in. So this is the black area here, and then if I want to select red, or this kind of data, I just boost that slightly. Okay, to new layer. Just going to get rid rid of some of these layers from below, so it speeds it up a little bit. Delete those out now. Now what you can do is to do a color balance. So if you go to layer, new adjustment, color balance, okay to that, and then it will bring up this, and now you can select shadows, your midtones and your highlights. So just start with highlights. We can start playing with this so that you can see what kind of effect that's going to have, and we just want to reduce this kind of redness because I'm not really happy with the way that nebulosity is looking. It's looking a little bit too pinky. Once we've done that, we'll go to highlights, and again with this, see that dropping that down is instantly making that look so much better. But you introduce a lot of noise by going quite that severe, so we're just going to go fairly gentle with that and play around with some of the other sliders to try and get a bit more of a pleasing kind of colour. See, I don't want to go too crazy with it, so we'll leave it at that. Just close that. Control Shift Alt and E. So again, when you do a layer adjustment like that, you end up with just this layer mask that, so you can't carry on working on that. So you need to do your. What I might do is to try the gradient exterminator again, and what I'm going to do this time again is to balance out colours. So we're going to go inverse, filter, RC Astro, gradient exterminator. Again, if you haven't got that filter, there are other ways of removing gradients, but I honestly think for the amount of effort, it's far better just to let the computer do its thing, let the algorithm do it. See what this does for color balancing. It seems to have just put it back to pretty much what it was before. So yeah, I'm not really that happy with that, to be honest. We're going to leave it at that. So now what we can do is we can start to play around with the saturation and the vibrance as well. So that will help. So you can go to select the color range, and then if you click in the red area or the color that you want to select, and then you can control with this slider here how much of that color you select. So you don't want to go full because it will literally find any little bit of red in your drawing and select it. You want to go for somewhere where it gets a decent amount of your target. Just press OK, and then you can see it's selected that kind of area. So then from there you can go to layer, new adjustment layer, then hue and saturation. Okay, and you can see from there, you can drop the saturation, increase the saturation, but I'm actually going to see about the hue as well. Again, with a normal RGB image, you really don't get this kind of this issue. Because this is just hydrogen alpha, it's very difficult to get a natural looking target. Normally you just process this in black and white and it looks pretty good. It looks really detailed. It's a nice image, but if you want a nice color image to show, you've got to kind of really work this color down. Right, okay, that's fine, so we can close that. Yeah, new layer, and we are going to select again, go to color range again, select color, and this time we're going to go to vibrance. So it's layer, adjustment layer, vibrance. Okay. Again, you can play around with the saturation in here. You can then change the vibrance, which just gives it a bit of oomph. We are going to increase that a little bit. I don't want to overdo it. That one. Very subtle. We go a little bit higher. Don't go too much, because again, any big moves with any of this stuff is going to cause noise. So I'm going to leave it at that. And we're almost getting to the end point for this image. So create a new layer. I'm not going to mess around with any of these excuse me, because you don't need to make the stars smaller, because we're going to remove all those. You don't need to do any of the less crunchy, more fuzzy, because again that's all to do with stars. You could increase contrast if you wanted, but I really don't want to overdo this, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to just check the levels once more. I think we can go in. Maybe we can just go one or two. Okay, cool. Well, that's pretty much it. To get rid of some of these layers from below, I'm just going to delete them. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to filter. It's going to remove the stars. So we're going to go to dust and scratch in the noise file, in the noise folder. See, you end up with this screen. So let's bring that out a bit. You need to find some stars, because we've got to be very careful with this. You can end up with some horrible artifacts if you're not careful. So you can already see there's a bit of a black smudge around that, so that hasn't really worked. You can see this radius, the smaller you go, the less it actually does. So you go down to 2, and you've still got a lot of the stars still showing. You go up to right this way, and it completely smooths it out. And your threshold, see there, the lower you go with that, the more smoothed out it is. The higher you go, the more detail you keep, and the more the stars are removed, but at the same time you end up with these horrible black splodges. So it's good to have a bit of a play around with this to see if you can push it. So I don't think I'm able to push it too far. And we don't need to keep too much detail in. That looks pretty good. We've still got a decent amount of detail in here. And there are some people who post some really nice images, starless images, when they've got really stunning details left in and the stars are completely removed. I haven't been able to get anything like that yet, but it'd be good to do one day. Okay, I think that's pretty good. We're gonna okay that. For some reason mine always puts a little bit more detail back in once it's processed for some reason. But yeah. So we'll just check our levels. Stretch the white step a bit. I suppose because all the stars are gone, there's a bit less information on that in that area. So okay, that's pretty much it for that. Now we can go back to the grey layer. Just going to make sure that's still on 16-bit. Right, so we're going to pretty much start again. Checking our levels. Pull that in. Pull the white slider down. I don't know whether you can go past all these little lumpy bumpy bits, but I'm still going to keep it over there. I don't want to clip anything out. Right, so new layer, going to do a curve adjustment. Need to make sure that our image mode is RGB. Don't flatten it. Image adjustment, curves. You can do this as a layer and then adjustment, layer and curves, but this box gives you more options. You can use your control and select options in here, whereas you can't actually do that if you go into layer and then a new adjustment layer and curves. So if you create a new layer and then do your adjustments on that layer, to me that always works a bit better. Now I'm gonna stretch this, but unlike the other one, we don't want to stretch this too far. We don't want to introduce too much noise to it. So this nice sweeping curve will help bring some data out, but you don't want to go ramming this right up to the top, because you'll clip your data and you'll make it real noisy and ugly. So just gonna make sure this is, I hope it's still recording. Okay. So next we go new layer, image adjustment, levels, bring that black slider down. Okay, new layer. When I say new layer from now on, that is the Shift Control Alt and E, just so I don't have to keep saying that. So we'll do another curves, and we'll do our trick with the control and click. Gives you your black point. Control and click there, that gives you your white point. So it means that we can bring that up without bringing the black data up too much. Got to be careful with that one as well, because I found that does also introduce quite a lot of noise. So done that, adjustment levels, just check that can come in ever so slightly. Right, new layer. Now I've got two drawings open. This is going to really push this thing to its limits. Delete those. Always leave the one below as it was, because then you can adjust the opacity, whereas you can't do that if there's nothing below it. Okay, so now we're going to go to space noise reduction. Play. There we go. Zoom in. already I can see I must have left it on the 8-bit channel when I did it the other day, because this was really patchy, like an old Nintendo Game Boy kind of game graphics, so that's much better difference in that. So you can see why this thing's so powerful. It would take so long to try and do this manually. I'm going to run am I going to run that again? I'm going to leave that actually. I'm going to just do the space noise reduction. Again, with this one you want as much detail kept in it this time as well. So okay, look down at this black now. That is very, very nice. It's pretty good before actually, but yeah, I'm happy with that. Now new layer, and you might be able to get a bit more movement in on this side. Yeah, just 1, 2. Okie dokie. That's good. So now what we can do is we can reduce the stars, make stars smaller. And this one really will take an absolute age, so this is the right kind of time to go and get yourself a cup of tea or a beer, whatever you fancy, because it takes quite a while, or it does with this laptop especially. So. Okay, so now what you'll see, right, after action I forgot to do a new layer before I did that. You can just see that's just taking the star brightness down a bit, it's made them a bit smaller. That's good. New layer, and we will get rid of a load of these layers from underneath as well now, because it's getting very, very slow. Delete. Okay, so now we are going to do a sharpen. So to do that I normally go to filter, sharpen, smart sharpen. Okay, now ignore kind of stars. What I want to do, well, don't ignore the stars, but we want to get a nice sharpening of the detail in these areas here. So you can see if you go over the top, you end up with like black halos around all your stars. You can see that it's just ugly. So bring that down. Now I remember last time this took forever. So essentially what we can do, just leave it at that. Okay, let this do its thing. I remember this took quite a while last time, so we'll see. I suppose there's quite a lot for it to kind of figure out. But essentially we can just play around with the opacity to just decide what we're happy with sharpening wise, because you don't want to go too far, otherwise your stars look really crunched up, just really unnatural, like they've just been stuck on top of the image. You want to make sure you don't make your stars stand out too much. There's a few tricks which you can use afterwards that will help with this as well, but it's mainly this detail that we want to just get some nice kind of some crisp lines, some nice sharp detail in. So see how that goes. Okay, doesn't really look like it's done a lot. It starts a bit blotchy. see it's mainly sharp of the stars. We'll do a new layer, and then the next thing to do is less crunchy, more fuzzy. Essentially what that does is, at the moment you can see the stars kind of stood, they're too crunchy, they're too sharp around their edges, so this just puts a bit of a fuzz to the edges of the stars, just to diffuse them a little bit and make them kind of blend in with the rest of the image a bit better. So it's quite a nice effect. If you over sharpen, it gives a really unnatural look to the image. So it's good to do this, and you can see already that just looks way better. Just gives a bit of fuzz. If you zoom in further, stars are kind of a little bit elongated, but you can see just how much nicer that is. Much better. Okay, I kind of think just do one more check on the levels. We can't do anything on there, so that's fine. Now what I am going to do, and this is something that I've never tried before, so it might work, might not. I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Dust and Scratches. Make sure you've done a copy, because this is the layer that I'd normally use, and I'm just trying something a bit different with this one over the top. I'm not going to go quite as severe as we did with the color data. I'm going to have a little bit of a play around to see if I can get a bit of, I don't want to remove too many of the stars, but I think maybe something like that could look pretty cool. Let's see, let's get that threshold right so we don't create some horrible artifacts. I think that could look pretty cool. A bit higher, maybe a few more. A bit less. It mirrors that way more than 5 was. Right, we're gonna go with that, I think. So you can see it's awesome, actually. I really like that. So now we're going to start off with this one. Let's give this one a go first. So Control All, Control C, that copies, and then we're going to paste it onto there. Then you go to set that to luminosity. There we go. Adds in a lot of detail onto there, and we're going to just play around with the opacity of that, opacity, until you're kind of happy with the way it looks. The only thing it doesn't do obviously that well is to kind of whiten these stars, because there's not really anything, there's not a lot of data to put over it, but it has made a huge difference to adding some real contrast into that image. So make a copy of that one. What an idiot. Get rid of those two, back to that one there, and we'll try again with just this one without the reduced stars. So Control All, Control C, Control A, Control All. That's not it, is it? I didn't click on that, that's why. Control A, Control C, Control V. There we go, it's better. Yeah, and that one looks pretty cool as well. So again, with that one, I normally drop the opacity down a little bit, just to kind of reduce those stars a bit. Still quite
still quite like that. Now I don't know how this is going to look on your screen, because every time I process it, anything on this computer, when I then go and put it onto my phone, I get a really nice looking image on here, put it onto my phone, and it looks horrible. So I'm going to get a calibration device to calibrate my screen. But for now, yeah, pretty cool. Well, there you go. After that, you can then export those or just save them as JPEGs, and hot to trot. You can always check that you can't change any of this. I can't. It's all as far as we can go with it. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the video and hope you learned something new. If you've seen anything that I've done that you would have done differently, then please comment. If you have any questions as well, then please put them in the comments box and I'm happy to answer. And this is something that I found out how to do this, well, I figured this out how to do this just a few weeks ago. I've done it on a couple of my images now, but it's something I'm still learning, still finding new little tricks like I found there with the reduced stars. But it's a good way of getting a nice colour image out of just hydrogen alpha data, so you only need that one filter. There's no need to mix with O3 or S2 or to add it to an RGB image. You get a nice balanced image just with that one filter. So if you like the video, then please hit the like button. If you want to see more, then please subscribe. I'll do my best to post some more videos soon. But until then, thanks for watching and clear skies.